To the south of Tel Aviv, between the Florentine neighborhood and the edges of Jaffa City, lies the American colony. This extraordinary jewel tells a fascinating historical and architectural story. In order to begin telling the story of the American colony, we must fly thousands of miles away from the city of Jaffa, across the Atlantic Ocean to the state of Maine, which lies on the east coast of the United States of America. On August 11, 1866, the three-masted Nellie Chapin sailed from the coast of Jonesport, Maine, carrying 157 passengers, among them 48 children under the age of 12. The ship's cargo included 22 ready-to-assemble wooden houses, which were pre-prepared in Maine, as well as agricultural equipment and modern tools, all meant to assist the settlers in building the colony they were planning. Since at that time expanding the settlement within the United States was considered the divine calling, this group of settlers' choice of location was definitely unusual.
We have here a small group of Christian lovers of Zion from Maine. They believe strongly that there would be a revival of the homeland for the Jewish people.
It was unique. This was not one of the new ventures of a nation, founding a new nation altogether. Even as promised in the scriptures, it was a renewal.
Most passengers aboard the Nellie Chapin were members of the Church of the Messiah, which was founded and led by the Reverend George J. Adams. The members of the church believed their calling was to take part in bringing the Jewish people back to the land of Israel, which will then pave the way to the coming of the kingdom of heaven. They were a small group of Christians who dedicated their lives to encouraging the return of the Jewish people. They did not believe in converting Jews and were happy to participate in developing the land, as this was why they came. After sailing for 42 days, the Nellie Chapin entered the port of Jaffa. Since they did not yet have the permit from the Ottoman rule to settle on the land that was intended for them, they temporarily set camp on the beach. Very soon they were inflicted with great trouble and hardship. In the first months of their stay, 9 children died of infection and diseases. Several months went by before their chosen piece of land was finally purchased and they were able to start construction. The beautiful wooden houses made the tiny neighborhood very appealing, but the hardships kept pressing on. In spite of many modern farming implements brought with them, including a harvesting machine, the settlers' knowledge of agriculture did not serve them in this Mediterranean climate that burdened them. They did not harvest enough produce to live by. Mortality rates continued to be high, and finally, internal disputes and malfunctioning on the part of their leader, Reverend Adams, brought their ill-fated journey to an end. Only 2 years after setting foot on the land of Israel, most of the members of the Church of the Messiah had left their lovely wooden houses behind and returned to America. After most of the people from Maine left the neighborhood, the German Templars moved in. They started the construction of public buildings, which now include the Emmanuel Church, completed in 1904. The German Templars were deported from Israel by the British during the Second World War. As the years went by, the colony became an abandoned and neglected site. A few rickety wooden structures were the only evidence of its American past. The process of rebuilding the American colony and stopping the destruction, as well as turning the story of the colony from a trivial footnote to a well-known story and an important and inseparable part of the history of Israel, is mostly due to Jean and Reed Holmes. Dr. Reed Holmes is a historian, photographer, and storyteller from Maine. His deep interest in the story of the American colony began as early as 1942, after meeting an elderly lady of 88 by the name of Thurza Rogers in Jonesport, Maine. That same lady was one of the original settlers of the colony, a lively 13-year-old in 1866.
She was one of, more than 20 young people around the age of 20, or the teens and so on. She just automatically started talking about life at that period of her youth, and how the young people used to ride up and down the shore here at Jaffa on their horses, and not only rode up and down the shore, but they rode out to Ramleh too. And of course at Ramleh you have the tall tower there, and they were enjoying going up that high on the tower and being able to look right over to here to see where they were next to the shore, and it was an exciting experience for them. And I was getting the feeling that this story was going to have to be told.
Dr. Holmes' meeting with Thurza Rogers marked the beginning of a long and in-depth research that spanned decades and resulted in his book, The Forerunners, till this day the most comprehensive publication about the American colony. It sheds a more complex light on the story of the colony, which was hitherto viewed as mostly tragic. The story of Rollo Floyd is one fascinating example of the tales that emerge out of Reed Holmes' research. Although the Floyd family was one of the first to lose a child in Jaffa, they overcame their grief and remained in the colony all their lives. With the carriage he brought with him from Maine, his acquired skill in Arabic, and his innate sense of initiative and resourcefulness, Rollo Floyd became the man who inaugurated the new gravel road between Jaffa and Jerusalem.
They arrived in 1866, and in 1869 you had the new road going from Jaffa to Jerusalem, which was preparing the way for tourists to make their journey and for the Jewish people as they returned to the port of Jaffa. The first wheels on that road were the wheels of that carriage that Rollo Floyd took over there, and the Sultan of Turkey got in touch with him and asked him if he would build a stage line between Jaffa and Jerusalem. Well, sure, he'd be glad to do that.
This was the beginning of an exciting career. A few years later, Floyd was the proud owner of a fleet of light carriages and chariots. He was one of the biggest travel agents in the Middle East and was considered one of the founders of modern tourism. Rollo Floyd lived in the land of Israel until the day he died in 1911. He is buried in Jerusalem. The contribution of Gene Holmes, a certified construction supervisor from Massachusetts, to the journey of rediscovering the American colony went far beyond mere theoretical research.
When I came here to Israel on the first trip, Reed's book, The Forerunners, was just being printed. Nobody had read it. But he brought us to what he called the American colony. And I thought, how sad. This American colony has great potential, but it's falling apart, it's being neglected, it's being destroyed by the weather and by people, vandalism. I suggested to him that he needs to make a plan to save this American colony because of its history. I drew up a plan to go to the municipality and ask them to save it as a historic district.
This marked the beginning of the long and Sisyphean process of the conservation and restoration of the colony. A joint effort by the municipal authorities, the Israel Antiques Authority, and Mrs. Holmes herself began to yield fruit, and the abandoned and neglected neighborhood began to transform. In 2002, Gene and Reed Holmes, by a surprising turn of events, were able to purchase one of the houses in the colony which was facing demolition. The couple labored for over 2 years to restore the building, implementing preservation techniques from Maine and employing professionals who specialized in 19th century building restoration, until they were finally able to achieve a perfect reconstruction of the original house built almost 140 years ago, with additions added over the years. In the process of restoring this wooden house from Maine, Gene and Reed Holmes had a pleasant and extraordinary surprise that made their connection to the place even stronger.
What I was doing, I was going around this place and looking for a ceiling rafter that would have the name of the father of the family that built this house. There was a rafter, there was no name written, but there were initials, and even though they were upside down, I could read them, and they were MTW. That was the name of Mark Wentworth. Now, way back in the 1930s, I went to college with my cousin, and our family background was in Maine, and his name was Mark Wentworth Holmes. And that was Mark Wentworth there. So there you go. I was so thrilled, and I'm thrilled right now.
This family just lives here in my mind. This is their home, you know, and I'm happy, I'm privileged to be here, to have an opportunity to live in the same house and walk the same floors that they did.
The reconstructed building became the main Friendship House, the downstairs level serving as the Museum of the Jaffa American Colony. The museum opens a window into 19th century Maine and is dedicated to commemorating the fascinating story of the American colony. Jean and Reed Holmes won recognition in Israel and a Preservation Award in the state of Maine. The city of Tel Aviv placed a memorial plaque at the beach near the place of arrival of the Nelly Chapin to commemorate the 157 passengers. Today, more than 140 years after the original colony was founded, the area where the people of Maine first settled is a real estate gem and one of the city's most extraordinary beauty spots.